Have you ever felt like something is just off in your life, but you can't really put your finger on what it is? Like, no matter how hard you try to improve, there's something pulling you back into the same mistakes, the same destructive patterns, the same frustrating cycles. Maybe it's that inner voice that shows up at the worst possible time, trying to talk you out of your dreams right when you're about to achieve something meaningful. Or that random burst of anger that seems to come out of nowhere, exploding in situations that really, when you think about it later, weren't even that serious. It could even be envy. Envy you'd rather not admit to, but deep down, it quietly eats away at you whenever you see someone else achieve something you wish you had. Or maybe it's that paralyzing fear of failure that makes you procrastinate, hide behind excuses, and never fully go after what you want. What you might not realize is that none of this is an accident. There is a force working in the background of your mind, quietly shaping your personality, your reactions, and even your choices. A force you've been ignoring for most of your life, even though it's been active the whole time. Carl Jung called it the shadow. The shadow is the hidden side of your psyche, the place where you've buried everything you didn't want to see about yourself. Your repressed desires, your weaknesses, your shame, your darkest emotions, all the parts of you that you learned to hide in order to fit in and be accepted by the world.
But here's the problem. What you ignore ends up controlling you. The shadow doesn't just disappear because you pretend it's not there. In fact, the more you reject it, the stronger it grows in the dark corners of your mind, waiting for the perfect moment to burst through. It shows itself when you explode with rage for no good reason. When you push away the people who love you, then wonder why you always feel alone. When you judge other people harshly, not realizing you're just projecting onto them what you can't stand in yourself. When you sabotage your own success, fail on purpose, and later convince yourself you were never good enough anyway. Carl Jung had a powerful line about this. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." If you don't face your shadow, it will keep pulling the strings behind the scenes, while you keep telling yourself it's all just bad luck or random chance. But if you have the courage to look inside, to face what you've been running away from, you can actually turn your shadow into a powerful source of energy and wisdom. And that's exactly what we're going to explore in this video. Get ready, because this isn't going to be comfortable. But if you're serious about breaking the cycle of self-sabotage and taking back control of your life, this is the only path forward.
Let's get into it. From the moment you were born, you were taught about what is acceptable and what isn't. Even when you were a little kid, you probably heard things like, "Stop crying, don't be weak, don't be angry, be a good person, don't be selfish, share." And little by little, entire parts of you were pushed down. So what happened to your anger, your sadness, your urge to stand up for yourself? What happened to the impulses that didn't match the perfect image of a good person that everyone wanted you to be? They didn't disappear. They got buried deep in your unconscious mind, forming what Jung called the shadow. This shadow isn't some far-off abstract idea. It's alive inside you right now, quietly running the show whenever you're not paying attention. For example, think about how uncomfortable you might feel around someone who is extremely confident. That discomfort could come from the fact that, deep down, you've repressed your own desire to express yourself freely. Or when you harshly criticize someone who goes after recognition and praise, is it possible there's a part of you that also craves to be seen,
but you buried that desire under layers of self-denial. When you feel envious of someone's success, maybe it's because you shut down your own ambition long ago. Maybe someone once told you that wanting too much was arrogant, so you learned to deny it, but it didn't go away. You end up walking through life like an iceberg. The part other people see, the tip, is tiny compared to the massive chunk of who you really are that's hidden below the surface, invisible even to you. Ignoring the shadow doesn't mean it stops working on you. In fact, the more you deny it, the more it acts out in destructive ways. It shows up as irrational fears, as the tendency to make the same mistakes over and over, as resentment you can't quite explain, as those toxic patterns that seem to repeat in your life like a broken record.
So the real question isn't whether you have a shadow. You absolutely do. The real question is, how much of your life is the shadow controlling without you even noticing? So let's break down exactly how this hidden part of your mind can manipulate you and keep you stuck in patterns that feel impossible to escape. Because once you see these patterns, you'll never be able to unsee them. Have you ever wondered why certain themes keep repeating in your life? Why, no matter how hard you try to change, you keep ending up back at the same place? Why you feel random anger, envy, or fear without any logical reason? That's the shadow at work. It's not asleep, it's in charge. And the scariest part, it acts without you even realizing it. The shadow doesn't attack you head-on. It doesn't yell or announce itself. Instead, it operates subtly, silently, shaping your emotions, your choices, and even the way you see reality. It's like a ghost inside you, twisting your perceptions, making you believe you're the one making decisions when really you're being guided by impulses you buried long ago.
One of the most common ways the shadow takes over is through projection. Have you ever felt this weird, intense hatred towards someone for no good reason? Or judged someone way too harshly over something minor? That's usually projection. You see, the shadow makes you see in others what you can't stand to see in yourself. For example, someone who grew up being told to shut down their ambition might feel irrational disgust toward ambitious, driven people. Someone who is afraid of their own assertiveness might get really uncomfortable or even angry around people who speak their mind. Instead of recognizing these qualities in ourselves, we project them onto other people and attack them there. Another big way the shadow shows up is through self-sabotage. That's when, on some deep, hidden level, you create obstacles to your own growth. You procrastinate when it matters most. You give up right before a breakthrough. You make the same wrong choices again and again. It's like there's a part of you that's terrified of change, a part that believes you don't deserve success, or fears what might happen if you actually do change. That's why so many people fail just when they're about to reach something big. The shadow steps in as a kind of invisible gatekeeper, making sure you never leave your comfort zone, even if that comfort zone is basically your own unhappiness. And it doesn't stop there. The shadow also messes with your relationships. Have you noticed how some people keep attracting the same toxic partners over and over? Or how some people always wind up in one-sided friendships where they get used or ignored? That's the shadow at work too, because on an unconscious level, we're drawn to situations and people who mirror our hidden wounds. If your shadow is filled with rejection, you might unconsciously pick partners who make you feel rejected all over again. If you're full of insecurity, you might attract people who keep you doubting your worth.
And the worst part? The shadow can actually hijack your identity completely, and you won't even notice. You'll convince yourself, This is just who I am. I've always been unlucky. I've always been anxious. I've never been good enough. But the truth is, that's not who you really are. That's just your shadow talking, shaping your life from behind the scenes. In the next section, we'll go even deeper into the clear signs that your shadow is running the show and how to spot them before they sabotage you again.
So let's get into it. How do you really know if your shadow is in control? What are the unmistakable signs that it's running your life, even if you think you're making all the decisions? The first big clue is constant projection. Pay attention to the people who annoy you way more than they should. Have you ever found yourself deeply irritated by someone, even though objectively they haven't done anything terrible? That's your shadow talking. When someone's confidence rubs you the wrong way, it might be because there's a part of you that wishes you could be that confident, but you've been forced to hide it. If you feel a deep dislike for people who crave attention, maybe it's because there's a part of you that also wants to be seen, but you've buried that desire under years of self-denial. Projection is a defense mechanism. It lets you stay clean in your own eyes while dumping all those rejected feelings onto someone else. But the shadow doesn't go away. It keeps working in secret, and you keep blaming other people for conflicts that really start inside yourself. The second sign of the shadow running the show is self-sabotage. And let's be honest, self-sabotage is brutal because it usually happens right when things are about to go well for you. Ever been so close to a breakthrough and then suddenly you lose motivation, or you pick a pointless fight, or you get distracted and procrastinate until the opportunity slips away? That's the shadow pulling you back. Why does it do that? Because the shadow is terrified of change. If somewhere deep inside you were taught that you don't deserve happiness or love or success, then your shadow will do everything possible to keep you at that same familiar but painful baseline. It feels safer to fail than to face the unknown. That's why people so often give up right at the finish line. They've worked for months or years to change, but the moment real transformation is within reach, the shadow steps in and says, "Nope, this is too dangerous," and self-sabotage takes over.
The third unmistakable sign is what I call relationship traps. If you look back and see a pattern where you always attract the same type of partner, the same toxic friendships, the same disrespectful bosses, that's not random. That's your shadow. Your shadow basically looks for people who can reinforce the wounds you haven't healed. If you grew up feeling unwanted, you might subconsciously chase people who make you feel unwanted again, because it's what your unconscious mind thinks is normal. If you buried your anger, you might fall for partners who walk all over you, triggering that anger indirectly, because you don't know how to express it directly. Think of it like this. If you have an unhealed wound, your shadow will keep poking it by choosing the people and situations that bring you back to that pain. Until you consciously break that cycle, you'll keep repeating it. Another huge red flag is an irrational fear of being judged. Are you terrified of looking foolish? Do you avoid sharing your true opinions or putting yourself out there because you're scared people will criticize you? That usually means your shadow is filled with shame. Somewhere along the way, you learned that being imperfect was unacceptable, or that being authentic would get you rejected. So you built a shield to protect yourself, but it keeps you small and silent. The price of that is huge. You never really live life on your own terms because you're too busy managing other people's opinions. But that fear, it's rarely about the present moment. It's a leftover from your past, a shadow of everything you buried to stay safe.
And then there's one of the heaviest signs of all, the emptiness. Have you ever had that feeling that something is missing, even though, on paper, everything seems fine? Like you have a job, maybe a relationship, your health is okay, but deep inside, there's a void you can't fill. That emptiness is usually the price you pay for amputating parts of yourself. You denied your real desires, your wild dreams, your authentic personality, all to fit in. But the cost of burying your truth is that you lose your sense of wholeness. You feel hollow. If any of this is resonating with you, I want you to know that doesn't mean you're broken. Actually, noticing these patterns is the first step toward taking your life back. Because the real danger is not having a shadow, we all have one. The real danger is being completely unaware of it and letting it run your life without question. And you might wonder, okay, but what happens if I just keep ignoring it? That's what we're going to look at next, because ignoring your shadow doesn't make it vanish, it makes it stronger, and eventually it will break through in ways you can't control. Think about it. You can pretend you're not angry for years, but that anger will eventually explode in some random, devastating way. Maybe you blow up at someone you care about, or you sabotage a career opportunity, or you start behaving in destructive ways you can't explain. If you deny your deepest desires long enough, they might come out sideways through addictions, unhealthy obsessions, compulsive behaviors. Anything to try to soothe the ache of something you were told you couldn't have. If you bury your traumas, they can show up as chronic anxiety, panic attacks, or even physical health symptoms that doctors struggle to explain. The shadow isn't just in your head, it literally shapes your entire reality. If you never face your fear of abandonment, you might cling to toxic relationships just to avoid being alone. If you never admit your ambitions, you might keep sabotaging yourself at work and telling yourself you don't deserve to succeed. If you bury your needs, you might spend years in silent frustration, feeling like your life is missing something essential, but not knowing what. And the scariest part, if you keep ignoring the shadow, it can eventually take over your entire personality.
Maybe you've met someone who seems permanently bitter, someone who sees the world as an endless list of enemies, someone who is constantly defensive, ready to attack at the slightest threat. That person wasn't born like that. They probably spent their whole life stuffing down their pain, their disappointment, their rage, until the shadow grew so powerful it took over completely. The result is a miserable cycle of resentment, fear, and self-sabotage. And if that wasn't bad enough, ignoring your shadow for too long can make you feel like a stranger in your own body, like you're disconnected from who you really are. Psychologists sometimes call this depersonalization. You try so hard to be good and cut out anything dark, but in doing that, you chop away huge pieces of your authentic self. Eventually, you end up feeling empty, living like a ghost, never fully alive. So the big question is, how do you break out of this? How do you stop being a victim of your own shadow and actually turn it into a source of power? That's what we'll dive into next. Practical, real-world ways to bring your shadow into the light so it stops controlling you from the dark. Because integrating your shadow doesn't mean destroying it. That's impossible. You can't destroy it, it's part of you. But you can make it conscious, own it, and transform its raw energy into something positive. And that's what we're going to explore in the next section, how to do the actual shadow work, step by step, so you can finally start living as your whole self, not just the edited version you show to the world.
All right, so now that you understand the risks of ignoring your shadow, let's talk about what to actually do about it. Because you might be wondering, how do I bring my shadow into the light? How do I stop it from running my life without me knowing? First, you have to realize integrating your shadow doesn't mean killing it off or destroying it. That's not possible. Your shadow is part of you. And Jung's biggest insight was that the shadow isn't your enemy. In fact, it can become your greatest source of power, creativity, and even confidence if you learn how to work with it instead of denying it. So let's break this down into steps you can actually apply in real life. Step 1. Become aware of it. This means paying close attention to your emotional triggers. The next time something or someone provokes an exaggerated reaction in you, maybe anger, maybe jealousy, maybe disgust, stop for a second. Don't just react on autopilot. Ask yourself, what does this say about me? Why does this bother me so much? Instead of blaming the other person, turn your gaze inward. If someone seems arrogant and it gets under your skin, is there a chance they're showing a kind of confidence that you once had to bury? If you feel a strong dislike toward people who chase success, is there a part of you that craves achievement too, but you were told it was wrong or selfish? The shadow shows up strongest in the places you judge other people the hardest. So whenever you catch yourself being harsh, that's your clue. There's probably something buried there that you don't want to see. Step 2. Allow yourself to feel what you've denied. Maybe you grew up believing you weren't allowed to be angry, or that it was shameful to feel envy, or that fear made you weak. So you learned to push those emotions down. But here's the truth. Those feelings don't just vanish. They stay hidden and rot until they leak out in destructive ways. Instead of trying to shut them down, practice acknowledging them. Tell yourself, yes, I feel anger. Yes, I feel jealousy. Yes, I'm scared. And remind yourself, that's okay. That doesn't mean you act on every impulse or explode on people, but it does mean you stop pretending those feelings aren't there, because as long as you deny them, they have power over you. When you face them head on, you take your power back.
Step 3. Reflective writing. This is such a powerful tool. Get a notebook or even open a blank document and start writing down your deepest, rawest thoughts. No filters, no trying to sound good or nice. Ask yourself questions like, what parts of myself do I reject? What traits in others trigger me the most, and why? What do I secretly fear people will discover about me? Let it all spill out. Even if it feels dark or embarrassing, that's exactly the stuff you need to see. Because naming your shadow brings it out of the darkness and into the light of awareness. And once it's conscious, you can work with it instead of being controlled by it. Step 4. Visualization and inner dialogue. It might sound weird at first, but Jung recommended actually talking to your shadow like it was a separate part of you. Close your eyes, imagine that hidden part of you, the side that feels rage, fear, jealousy, shame. Picture it as a character. What does it look like? What does it want to say? Instead of fighting with it, listen. Often you'll discover your shadow isn't a monster. It's a wounded part of you that just wants to be heard, understood, and reintegrated. By giving it a voice, you can start a conversation with it. You can negotiate with it, and little by little, you'll transform that raw, repressed energy into something far more constructive. Step 5, reframe your shadow's energy. When you integrate your shadow, you realize that all those dark qualities actually have a healthy side. Anger can become assertiveness. Fear can become caution and wisdom. Envy can show you what you truly desire and motivate you to go after it. Your shadow holds the keys to your authenticity, your passion, even your courage, but only if you stop treating it like the enemy. It's not a one-day process. Integrating your shadow is a lifelong journey. It takes honesty, courage, and a willingness to look at the parts of yourself you were taught to hate. But the reward? Real freedom, a sense of wholeness,
and a level of power over your own life you can't even imagine if you're still stuck in denial. Now, you might be wondering, if this is so powerful, why don't more people do it? Why do so many people stay stuck, blaming the world or their bad luck? That's a really important question, and the answer is simple. It's hard.
Facing your shadow means giving up the comfortable illusion that you've got yourself all figured out. It means confronting the possibility that you might be the one holding yourself back. It means taking radical responsibility for your own patterns instead of blaming your parents, your boss, your partner, or society. Most people don't want to do that. They'd rather keep telling the same stories about why life is unfair. They'd rather keep repeating their old patterns than go through the discomfort of real change. It's painful to admit that you have the seeds of selfishness, cruelty, or weakness inside you. It's painful to admit you've projected your fears onto others. But if you're still here, listening to this, then something inside you is different. You wouldn't be watching a video about the shadow if you weren't ready to grow. It means there's a part of you that knows you're tired of repeating the same patterns, tired of being stuck in the same frustrations, tired of living with unconscious forces pulling your strings. And that's the difference. That willingness to look at yourself honestly is exactly what sets you apart. So here's the challenge. Don't just treat this video like another piece of interesting knowledge. Use it. Take action. If you resonated with what we talked about, I want you to go deeper. Grab a notebook tonight and start that reflective writing. Write about what triggers you. Write about the traits you hate in others. Ask yourself, what part of me have I been denying? And if you feel brave, share it in the comments. When you talk about your shadow, you bring it into consciousness. Even writing a short sentence like, I realized I'm jealous of people who succeed, or I noticed I judge confident people, is already a first step. That act of naming your shadow weakens its grip over you. And if you're ready to go even further, stick around because in the next video, we're going to dive into another piece of the puzzle: how to build a new identity once you've started integrating your shadow. Because tearing down illusions is only half the journey. You also have to build something better to replace them. So if you're serious about your personal evolution, you can't afford to miss it. All right. I want to thank you for having the courage to face these ideas today. Most people won't. Most people will keep living in denial. But you're already different just by daring to ask the hard questions. Remember, you don't have to destroy the darkness inside you. You just have to shine a light on it. If you found this video valuable, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment about what part of your shadow you've discovered today. Let's build a community where we can grow together and break these unconscious patterns once and for all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.